better. It's not. It produces more greenhouse gases, and this is why. Let's take the cow. Ruminant animals generate lots of methane. They do it mainly, most of the methane comes from regurgitation of cud. When they chew their cud, so they burp it up. So burps lots. And there's some that comes out the other end too. But most of it comes up from regurgitation. Now, in a feedlot, what they call a calf-cow operation, feedlot operation, a steer, let's say, will be on pasture from birth till about 10 months old. And then they're transported from there to a feedlot and put on a high-energy grain diet. Now, what happens to an herbivore when you take them off from grasses and put them on grain? The rumination shuts down. So now they're not producing the methane. Still a little bit coming out the rear end, but they're not burping anything up because there's nothing to ruminate on. But that's why they grow so fast on a feedlot. They gain weight very quickly and muscle mass very quickly on these diets. And that's why they do it. It's about throughput. It's about bringing animals to slaughter weight as fast as possible. So, on average, I was talking to a professor recently at Cornell University who's a professor of beef sciences. And right now, the average age of a cow or a steer to reach slaughter weight is 14 months. They're pushing that down. They're shooting for 12 months. So they'd be 1 year old when they're slaughtered. But even at that, it's a year and 2 months now. On grass-fed operations, it's 24 to 26 months to reach the same weight, just eating grass. So they're eating more of the landscape, but they're producing methane for how many months more? 8 to 10 months more, which contributes more greenhouse gases by far than a feedlot operation. Now, I'm not advocating for feedlots at all. It's just the fact of the science. That's the way it works. That's why you see, like this guy I know at Cornell, advocating for feedlot systems over against grass-based systems, because grass-based systems are so much worse for the environment. From top to bottom. Yes.
So could you say something about the humaneness?
Okay, humane. The word humane, by most dictionaries, in my Webster's, is framed, it's a very short definition framed by 3 words. Compassion, kindness, and mercy. Now, if you've ever been in 4-H or FFA, you've raised animals for that, auction them off at the end of the fair, and you could raise an animal with compassion and kindness, but do you ever show them mercy? Do we spare the lives of any of these animals? No. They will all end up in the kill line. They all will. Every one of them. Except the fortunate ones that may end up in a sanctuary. But that's just it. You cannot make it humane. You can't say, I know a couple of vets in Vermont. Vermont is like the #1 organic dairy state in the United States. And a couple of vets I was talking to up there, they said actually their observation, in their opinion, it's worse for the animals than a conventional dairy. Because on a conventional dairy, they're able to get what they call subtherapeutic antibiotics. A couple of reasons. It produces more milk, but it also forestalls mastitis. An organic operation, you can't give them drugs. It's not organic at that point. So milk production tends to be a little bit lower, which means that's why the cost is higher for the product. But mastitis tends to be more of a problem. You don't treat it. Now, I had one woman who told me she's contracted in the Ithaca area, who's contracted to Organic Valley. And I was talking to her, and she says, I said, what's the average lifespan of one of your organic cows? 6 years. That's the same as conventional dairy, 4 to 6 years. That's the lifespan of an animal that can live 30 to 35 years. And Is that humane? To be impregnated every year. To think that some people have the concept that a cow just gives milk. They have to be pregnant once, but after that, you keep milking and keep giving lots of milk. No, you don't. Lactation cycles go up and down, just like humans. They have the same gestation period as humans, 9 months. So when they have their calves are taken away immediately on organic and large-scale operations because the milk is needed for the market for human consumption. So no, and what happens to those calves? You've got Wisconsin's a big dairy state. Michigan is on even keel with Wisconsin for dairy production. We're now ramping it up in our state because by Albany there's a new Cheovan yogurt factory. And Greek yogurt sales have gone through the roof. So our brilliant governor, what he decided to do to unfetter the dairy industry in our state. You got to remember how important dairy is to New York because Cornell is the #1 dairy college for veterinary sciences in the United States. Bovine growth hormone, or now it's called BST, bovine somatotropin. Heard of that? Invented at Cornell. It's their what's called their pro-dairy program is the largest in the United States. So what does our governor do? He lists all environmental caps for clean air and clean water off the dairies so they can produce more milk, have more animals per operation. Just basically deregulate it completely so they can meet the fluid milk requirements for Greek yogurt. It's a nightmare. And I was involved with a lawsuit for 6 years with some citizens who were trying to sue the largest dairy in the state for degradation of well water and surface water and air quality. And I got certified in the state of New York as a water operator, so I was able to do the water sampling to satisfy the chain of custody for their lawsuit. They ended up losing the lawsuit. Western federal district judges were basically corporate friendly, to say. But these people, their property values have gone down as much as 90%. They can't, in summertime, they can't go outside because the flies are so thick. The air stinks all the time. They all have asthma-like symptoms. They spontaneously get bloody noses. It's a nightmare. One person died from drinking well water because E. coli was so high. So what does this one particular farm do? Oh, we're sorry, but we'll give you bottled water for the rest of your life. And then she was in her 70s, and Fred died of prostate cancer a few years later. So they don't have to supply water anymore now. But I could go on and on about that situation, what happens to the environment because of animal agriculture. It's a nightmare. We don't have time. Fresh water is running out on this planet. And all you have to do is, like I said, look at India. Look what's happening around the world with freshwater issues. We're running out. We're insulated here because you can go to any vending machine and buy a bottle of water. But it's a finite thing. Fresh, drinkable, clean water is running out. And agriculture is the biggest user of it. Yes. The question is, living in Wisconsin and being such an agricultural state, how do you work with farmers to get their switch to flip? Active listening. I do it, I'm working on a few farmers in my area doing this. And it's listening, it's calving season. We're just coming out of the calving season now. And it's listening to them. Because they know my background and they'll share things with me. Oh, I had a calf die, the calf was born, had pneumonia, it was cold, and so on. And I listen to their stories. And basically I ask them, well, how do you feel about that? And that's an important question. How do you feel about that? Everybody knows what they think about animals and what they think about the situation that calf is in, what they think about the economic losses that they might incur or get. But how do you feel about those calves? And calves, to me, are one of the cutest darn things on the planet. They're lovable. They're absolutely lovable. But the one thing to understand about most farmers that raise animals is that their switch flips at different times. Some of them have never been to an auction. If they're in the dairy business, when they send those calves off, some of them don't even want to be there when the calves are taken from the farm. Some of them never go to an auction and see the hundreds of calves that are going through to be sent off for slaughter. And that's what happens to most calves. Most people think, oh, they get used for veal. No. Yeah, well, the ones that are slaughtered within 72 hours of being born are, but it's veal that you see in dog food and cat food. The over surplus of calves in the dairy industry is huge, but they distance themselves from that. I know farmers who have never killed an animal and butchered it, they eat it. They have somebody else do it. I know a farmer in New York who, whenever he had a cow that broke a hip, it's called splitting out. And that happens because they give so much milk, and especially if you're giving them VST, they're overproducing milk, and they get osteoporosis. And then within just a few years, within usually a 6-year time frame, they have osteoporosis so bad that their hip will break because they're on concrete usually. Well, they just be walking around in anywhere. It's hip break, just like a human, walk, down they go. So they have to call a rendering company. And when the renderer brings his truck out, they have to shoot the cow before they can put the cow on the truck. That's regulation in most states. And I know this farmer, he gets on his ATV and he goes as far away on his farm as he can because he doesn't even want to hear the gunshot. Farmers are not bad people. They're not evil people. Don't get that out of your head. They're just people that are on a different point in the journey than some of us. What they need is our nurture. They need our help to connect with their better selves. I always come back to kind of agricultural metaphors, but I think that as people of compassion, as people of empathy, we are farmers of compassion. That means that the person that's standing in front of me, I see as a fertile field, and I will plant seeds. We don't walk away. No farmer walks away from, or no gardener would walk away from their garden, put seeds in the ground, walk away and say, well, in September I'm going to harvest. It doesn't work like that. You need to pull weeds. You need gentle rains. You need sunshine. You're the sunshine. You're the gentle rain. You need to nurture people. It's work. Interpersonal relationships are work. But it is so rewarding when somebody gets it. There was a farmer in Ontario, Canada, that happened with. He came, I was tabling at a conference in Toronto. He came up, he was going around with all these nonprofits just arguing how you have to have animals from soil fertility, blah, 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 blah. And the Joel Salatin argument. And he came up to me and he said, I said, no. I said, here's the book you need. It's called Growing Green. The subtitle of it is Animal-Free Organic Techniques. And he said, what? He said, well, I'm a certified Demeter biodynamic farmer. He's been doing it for years. But he's also in an area of Ontario, it's called the Grey Highlands, which is like rap agricultural land, but he got it cheap. And biodynamics work pretty well for vegetables, but growing crops for his animals, not so much. So, anyway, he was yelling and screaming at me, and I'm just standing there. He walked away. And the next year, I'm back there, and And he comes up to me and he says, "You remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember you." He shakes my hand and he says, "You know, I got thinking about that and I read that book." And he says it made sense. And he said, so he took part of his acreage and switched over to it because he had some things going for him where this is going to what we call organic agriculture was going to work out well for him. He switched over to that. And we were in the second year of a drought in Ontario and Western New York. And he said at that point, which was September, he said that compared to his biodynamic, the organic was off producing by 50% in a year's time. And he says, this is a no-brainer. Why would I do this? Why not go over this? I said, exactly. No animal inputs at all. No blood meal, no bone meal, no manure. So none of those pathogens, pharmaceuticals being taken up by the plants. Did you know prions that are responsible for mad cow disease, plants can take those up? And the animals can shed them through the manure and urine. So if you think you're immune to certain zoonotic diseases because you eat organic, take another look. Get the book Growing Green, read up on it, start gardening that way. Share it with farmers. If you belong to CSA, give them a book. You know, it's an investment. Give them a book. The question was, what is the percentage of animals, farm animals, that are used for feeding pets, for companion animals? I honestly don't know, but I know from what I've seen that a lot of that comes from the leftovers of slaughter from meat packing. So the actual percentage in weight and tonnage, I don't know what that is. But I think, on the other hand, you could say that all of it does, because all the animals that are slaughtered for food for humans, what's left over, the trimmings and so on, are used for pet food.
There's a good book called Foods, Pets, Die For. She's a Canadian author.
Oh, yeah, there's a book called
Foods, Pets, Die For.
Foods Pets Die For. It would have that information. Where farmers make more money if they switched over to organic produce or organic produce, definitely, because it's called a value-added market. It's like anything. It's like if you're selling tomatoes, but then you've got organic tomatoes, you make more money with it. It's a higher price point. If you have organic, in our area, we've got a couple of organic farms. They sell just a little bit higher price point, and they sell out before anybody else at the farmers market.
I mean, dairy
No animal products used in the production of food at all.
farmers, if they switched from raising cows to...
That's part of the work I do, is I reach out to farmers. I have toolkits for them to do that. It's a transition to get them over, but it's getting them to believe it to begin with. But once you get them doing that transition, take a certain amount of their acreage, start doing it. And then when they see the financial return, the benefit from it, it's just like snowballing going downhill. So.
What's an example that you mentioned?
Growing Green. Ian Tolhurst and Jenny Paul. Yeah. I think any true change, social change, and when we're talking about animals, this is a social justice clause. I don't, believe it or not, I don't call it animal rights anymore. I call it species rights, because what happens when any one species on this planet affects every other species on this planet? We need to be talking about species rights, and we ought to be looking at it as a truly grassroots movement. Talking to people at the grocery store. Strike up a conversation when you first encounter and back of you in line. Be obvious with the food you're putting on the belt. And they say, you see him saying, noticing what you're doing. He said, any questions? Just talking to people. Again, being farmers of compassion. We need to nurture compassion and empathy in people at a grassroots level. That's how all social justice changes have ever happened. It's from the bottom up, not from the top down. Okay, I think our time is up. I really appreciate it. Oh, I want to mention too, I'll be at this book signing table. I have some copies of the documentary Peaceful Kingdom, The Journey Home available. So if anybody is interested in that, I'll be out there for a while and you can get a copy. And this is a huge tool. It's been played across the United States in every kind of venue, and even farmers get it when they see this documentary.
Is your conversation being taught to universities? Is it picked up on your work?
A little bit. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here.